My name is Reverend Lethalma Yempata, and I have the distinct honor of serving as the Associate Executive Director of American Baptist Women's Ministries. American Baptist Women's Ministries is a Christ centered ministry with a commitment to encourage and empower women and girls to serve God. American Baptist Women's Ministries is a diverse community of American Baptist women and girls serving in ministry in Christ's name in the U.S., including Puerto Rico, as well as internationally with local, area, region, and state and national levels of ministry. American Baptist Women's Ministries strives to create and sustain communities of passionately faithful, mission minded women and girls engaged in worship, service, and friendship. Our ministries include domestic violence and human trafficking prevention and education, building beloved community, and developing leaders. This is our last webinar of the season. We will be back January 9th for our winter series. You can register and find out more about our upcoming webinars by visiting our website, abwomensministries.org/webinars. Here are some guidelines for your time with us on this webinar. You'll be muted throughout the presentation. However, you may use your raise hand icon during question and answer to be unmuted to ask a question, or you may type your question into the question box in your control panel. If you see a question written that is close to your question or is your question, you can upvote to emphasize another person's question, and we will address that question first. We will be taking polls throughout the presentation and hope to have your full attention and participation. Lastly, but certainly not least, please make sure to complete the survey provided at the end of this webinar so that we can continue providing you with outstanding webinars. It is a joy to tell you about our presenter for this evening, to introduce Mrs. Linda Cassel. She is the Director of Development for American Baptist Foundation and has been working with the foundation since January of 2008. She oversees the training and development of our regions, partners, and donors. She attended Alderson Broadus College and has over 20 years of experience in financial planning and investments. Linda has held numerous financial designations, including Series 6 and 63, along with life and health licenses. A lifelong American Baptist, she enjoys combining her knowledge of finance and charitable estate planning to advance the work of ministry and mission. Linda is a member of the Estate Planning Council of Northeastern Pennsylvania, the National Society of Certified Senior Advisors, and the Partnership for Philanthropic Planning of Philadelphia. She earned the Chartered Advisor in Philanthropy designation, CAP, designation for the American College, Bryn Mawr, Pennsylvania. Without further ado, I'll turn it over to Mrs. Linda Cassel.
Thank you, Lethalma, and good evening, everyone. It is a pleasure to be with you on this December evening and to talk to you a little bit about mapping a lifetime of financial wellness. And as we begin, I have a PowerPoint presentation that I share with you, and there will be quite a few things to learn this evening. I told Lethalma we probably could have done 3 webinars on this topic, but we will talk a little bit about an acrostic using the word MAP. Managing the present, how do we do that? How do we manage our finances and our the money that God has entrusted us with? How, do we anticipate the future, which is difficult sometimes? And the P that we're going to talk about in mapping is how do we provide for the efficient transfer of those assets once we leave this earth? So you may be confused, lost, bewildered, disoriented at this point, and I'm hoping that you'll be on a clearer path as we move forward. So managing your finances in the present, how do we do that? How do we anticipate future needs because we don't know the future? How do we plan for the transfer of all of the things that God has entrusted us with before we leave this earth? And as a bonus, you will receive some financial resources, and I'll share with you a little bit of time on question and answer at the end. So let's start where Christian women start, and that is with a scripture. And we know that we have to start when we talk about finance, looking at what the Bible says. And the earth and everything in it belongs to the Lord. We are just stewards of the possessions that he gives to us. And we know as Christian women that we trust God with that message in Scripture. So let's begin then from the center that everything belongs to God, but we are to be good stewards. How do we map our financial future? And it can get a little crazy, just like with the GPS. Sometimes you make a wrong turn, right? And then you hear the GPS say, you know, make a U-turn as soon as possible. Well, that's sometimes the way it is with finances as well. So let's look at it as a whole life stewardship plan, a map. Where do we begin? Where do we manage the present? How do we anticipate the future? And how do we provide for the efficient transfer of everything that God has given to us? Now, I don't know how many are on the call or what your age groups are, but here's the different life cycles that you or I might be in. And in considering financial planning or mapping a life plan for our finances, each stage gives us a different time frame. The first thing that happens to us, of course, is we're born. God created us, brought us into this world. And we enjoy the first, let's call it 18 years, living under the roof or with someone who basically is helping to take care of us. I was with Lethelma for half an hour before our meeting, and I got to see her little one and how she's learning to crawl, and Lethelma takes such good care of her. And in that stage, you know, we don't have to really worry so much about money and finance. The adults are worrying about it for us. But then we get to the age where we begin to earn money and accumulate. And that might be from the time you leave high school or college and you get your first job. There may be some on this call that are in that stage right now of actually beginning jobs, working through your 20s, your 30s. You're actually accumulating your assets. You're taking the stewardship of what God has given you. And that can be a little bit daunting. That can be sometimes hard to understand what to do and how to budget our money. Then you get to a stage where I am, which is the conservation stage. And so there may be some on the call that are in the age group where they're approaching retirement, they're in their late 50s, 60s, and all the things that maybe they've accumulated, a home or some bank accounts or some pensions, they're trying to conserve that. And that's a different cycle that you need to understand. And then finally, the last cycle is how do we distribute all of these things through our life that God has given us and entrusted us with. And that distribution stage has to happen because, as we know, we can't take it with us, can we? We know that when we leave this earth, we leave it with everything that we have accumulated and conserved to others. And so we're going to talk a little bit about those stages. I want you to know, because in my financial planning years and even now in philanthropy, most of the time that we as women spend is handling our dollars in that accumulation phase. That's where we spend most of our time, worrying about, do I have enough money, my budget, how do I pay off my bills, and budgeting, housing needs, and even a little bit of retirement planning is where we spend most of our financial time. Very little time, unfortunately, is spent on that distribution phase, the final phase. So anyone that's on the call that's maybe 50s and older, you should be thinking about the distribution phase, your estate plan, your beneficiary designations, wills and trusts, final wishes, charitable gifts. And so my job right now with the American Baptist Foundation is mostly devoted to that distribution phase, but we're going to talk today about the other phases as well. So let's look at some of the unique statistics about women and why I really like to talk to women, because over the next decade, there's some good news for women. we will control 2/3 of consumer wealth in the United States. And for a reason I'll share with you in a little while, we will be the beneficiaries of the largest transfer of wealth in the country's history. Estimates range between 12 and 20 trillion dollars. Now, if you, in your accumulation phase, haven't received any amounts of money that are significant, there is a chance that you may be part of this transfer of wealth. Many baby boomer women, of which I am one, will experience a double inheritance windfall. Why? We could be the recipients of both our parents, even our grandparents, and our husbands. We call it in the finance world TOW, TOW, transfer of wealth. Remember, money doesn't leave this earth. It just moves from generation to generation. And so the boomer women are possibly going to experience a double time in their life where they will inherit some monies. So let's look at that. Let's look at TOW for a minute, just so you're aware that even though in your life you may say, I have nothing that I really can leave or worry about or have accumulated, it's estimated that $20 trillion will be transferred from the greatest generation, those that are now in their 80s and 90s. And where will it go? It's going to go to my generation, to the baby boomers. As the greatest generation leaves this earth, many of you may have had grandparents that have passed. They were the savers. That generation didn't have the debt that the baby boomers have. And then my generation, the baby boomers, will have to pass their money to their heirs. Again, money doesn't leave the earth. As we pass on and go forward into eternity, our heirs will be the recipients. So with that in mind, ladies, and those on the call and on the webinar, according to the Department of Labor Statistics, and this is really something for women to know, 90% of us at some point in our lives, women, will be solely responsible for our finances. Now think about it, that could be at the time when you first, before you're married and you're just getting out of college, you're solely responsible. Or it could be in your latter years that you're solely responsible for your finances because of these very facts. Women outlive men. So statistically, as we think about being the sole recipients or caregivers of money, it's because of the longevity and life expectancy of women. Because of this also, and you can see according to the Department of Health and Human Services, that the life expectancy for women is 81.1 years and for men 76.2. So mostly as I worked in financial planning, I would see that women would outlive their spouses and then have to take care of the finances and have the real impact of the estate planning left to them. We also, as women, have a longer exposure to inflation and increased healthcare costs. So we have to plan. And also because sometimes, like with Thelma, we have children and we're trying to work as well. And sometimes we have to opt out of the workforce because of childcare, and that impacts our earnings during our working years. And then women traditionally are more conservative in their investing. So the good news again, senior women age 50 and older are controlling more of the dollars in our country. And boomer women, my age group, those born between 1946 and 1964, statistics are telling us we're the most financially empowered, the healthiest, and the wealthiest of any generation in history. Now, maybe you're one of or all of those, but, and maybe not, that might not represent you, but statistically, just so you know, the boomer women have been blessed to be financially empowered. But we have some challenges. how do we as women balance all that we do? And you can see her carrying the groceries. She's got, you know, things from work under one arm and probably heading home, Lethelma and others, to children and maybe a house full of things to do once we get home. Sometimes we feel like we're spinning. And I know when I worked and I had a family, I didn't know how I would ever get it all done. But we need to, like I said, start in small steps. And let's talk just a little bit about how to manage the present. And that, my women and friends, begins with a budget. Now, you know, we can get into how to budget and why to budget, but if we're living by crossing our fingers and hoping that we have enough money at the end of each month and not writing it down and really doing a budget, that is not a good plan. Again, we need to say everything belongs to God and not get stressed about it, but we have to think about developing a realistic budget. And when I was young and starting out with a family, we had what we called, maybe some of the women on the call can relate, an accordion envelope. And this envelope would open up and we would put money in it, each paycheck that went for rent or housing or food or gas. And today is no different than then. We might not just have a cash envelope. We may use a bank account and a cards that we use, but we have to develop a realistic, balanced budget. So to manage the present, think of the word realistic budget. Out of that budget, always think that God has blessed you with whatever means he's provided, and establish a time. Now, I'm a pastor's wife, so, you know, my husband would always speak of numbers like 10%, but I speak about a percentage of blessing that God has given you, and make it a regular commitment to him and to his work and ministry on this earth. Establish a time. And I'm going to provide you with some really good information on where you can go online to get free guidelines for a budget. So there's a wonderful financial planner named Dave Ramsey, and he talks in a Christian way about money and how to steward it. And I love the book. He writes Total Money Makeover. And I think it's kind of for women because we like to do makeovers all the time. But he talks about in that Total Money Makeover, how to balance a budget, how to develop a budget. And if you go to his website, which I've put on the screen there for you, and I will at the end of our webinar give it again, it's just daveramsey.com. And there's free things that you can even do online to create a spreadsheet of, you know, income and expenses. And it's just, he's just a wonderful resource for us. And we also have a few American Baptist resources that our ministers, Dr. Soares, Dr. DeForest Soares, is the senior pastor of First Baptist Church in Lincoln Gardens, New Jersey. And I've personally, you know, met with him, been involved with that church. And he has a wonderful program that he even was on CNN and talked about it, called D-Free, the debt-free lifestyle. And that website you can go to and get more information about how we as Christians can be debt-free. Now, not totally debt-free, but not having the burden of debt. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit. Managing the present, budgeting, is taking your income, as those blocks show you on the screen, and saying, I have so many blocks of income. And on top of that income, I have expenses. And those are fixed expenses. They're every month I have to have these expenses. And what you want to do is make sure that the income that you have supports those blocks and that you're living within a realistic, balanced budget. If you don't, you become like that red side of the screen that has a picture of someone carrying a heavy load called debt. And unfortunately, in our times today, starting with probably the baby boomers generation and on, we have taken on more debt than we should. And as Christians, that becomes stressful in our lives. It hinders sometimes what we're able to do in ministry and mission. And we need to, I guess this is a great time of the year, December, as we think about even overspending at the end of the year, to think about managing our debt load. And no matter where you're at, when your income and debt is side by side, you can always make a promise that I'm going to do better and have a balanced budget, or try and strive for a balanced budget for 2020. And so the end of this year, as you start to think about managing your budget and managing the present, think about, taking those, we call them baby steps, to get better and better at having a balanced budget for the present. Okay, so we're going to do our first poll, Lethelma, and we're going to talk about credit card debt, because when we think about credit card debt, it is a big problem in our country today and in our household. So I'm going to ask for the poll of what you think is the average total credit card debt per household in the USA. Now, this is just credit cards. It doesn't include auto loans, home mortgage, student debt. It's just credit card debt. How much are we carrying? All three of those numbers are big, but how do you vote? Let them do that. And then I'll show you the correct answer, but let's see what our viewers think is the average credit card debt per household in the United States. Okay, so many of you think that middle number, 60%, said $7,500. Okay, I'm going to show them the correct answer. Do I close it or you, Lethelma? Okay, the correct answer, the average credit card debt per household in the United States is C, $5,800. Now you can put yourself, you know how much credit card debt you're carrying, so you'll know, where you fall in line. But it was pretty revealing that most of you thought it was a little higher than that. It was 7,500. It's actually going down a little bit because of the, people are getting more educated on credit card debt. And also, after 2008, when the economy really collapsed, people started getting a better handle on their investing, their income and debt ratio. So the correct answer, friends, is C, $5,800, still substantial. That's a substantial amount to be carrying in credit card debt. Okay, now we're going to look at another question, because there's more debt in a household than just credit card debt to manage that becomes a heavy load. For us to manage the present, we have to get a handle on our income and debt. So I would like to do a poll right now and ask you, where is the rest of the debt in America? In other words, where is not the rest of it, where is the debt in America? And I want you to rank the top two of the following. Is it auto loans, the first, mortgage loans, student loans, or credit card? Give me your thoughts on the top two debt that we are looking at per household, the top two debts that are carried in our average household. And I think this is going to surprise you, because it surprised me as I prepared for this webinar. I thought I had the right answer, and statistics proved me wrong. which represents the top 2 highest amounts of debt in our households in the United States? We'll wait for the poll results to come in. Okay. Wow. I am impressed here. I am so impressed. Okay. That was an outstanding number, 90%. Let's see what the answer is. The top 2 mortgage loans on average across the country, 200,000. The shocking one, the number 2, and you nailed it, student loans. And that's actually what they're calling right now. We're in a crisis of our students that are carrying for years and years student loans. The third largest debt, of course, auto loans, and then the fourth was what we just decided was our average credit card debt of $5,800. But I want you to look at something on number 2, those student loans. 10% of those are delinquent. Delinquent meaning after 6 months, they're not being paid. And so you'll hear a lot of politicians talking about loan forgiveness now, what we're going to do about student debt. It's $1 trillion, several trillion dollars of student loan debt is out there. And it's very, very difficult for young people and young adults to handle. And also look at the number 4 credit card, that average $5,800. Look at the fact that the interest rate on that is, let me put my glasses on for this one, 16.86%. And 71% of people with credit card debt don't pay it off each month. They actually roll over their debt, which accumulates interest. And so that becomes a big, big problem when we're rolling over credit card debt. Okay, you guys aced that. That was an ace on that one. So the second letter in MAP is anticipate the future. How can we plan for the future when we don't know the future? Well, there's certain things that we can anticipate so that we can steward the possessions that we have, that we can leave a legacy of purpose, and that we can make a difference not only for today, but for generations to come. What do we know? We know that we'd like to provide for the future, our family, charitable goals. We also know that providing for the future requires some work, investment, planning, and time. For those with young children or children of school age, you're planning college, you're planning for your future, for retirement. You need to set savings goals. That's a great thing. And timelines. As you think about a new year, think about a percentage of your income that you're going to set aside in savings as an emergency fund or a timeline for college. Financial planners, when I was doing this for 20 years, we recommended an emergency fund of a minimum of 3 to 6 months of your expenses. So if your expenses, your basic needs, housing and food and all of those medical expenses and insurances, or let's just say, $4,000 a month or $3,000 a month, you should have set aside in an emergency fund 3 to 6 months in case of sickness or loss of job. And today, after the crisis in 2008, the financial crisis, they're now recommending financial planners 6 to 12 months set aside in a liquid, what I call a savings account or money market account that you could draw on if you lost your job or lost your health. So anticipating the future. How long should your money last? People are living longer in retirement. As you anticipate how long will you need your pension or IRA? You may need it for 20 to 30 years after you stop working. So those of you that are in my age group, you're looking at this, a healthy 65-year-old female, and that statistic represents me perfectly. I just turned 65, has a 50% chance of living until age 88 or for 23 more years. I don't want to work for 23 more years. So I'm thinking I need to have enough money set aside. And if you're a husband and wife that's 65 or older, at least one of you has a chance, 50% chance of living to age 92. And a 25% chance of living to age 97. And that just keeps going up and up. And so we need to anticipate how we're going to prepare for retirement. And are women worried? Compared to men, we're worriers. We tend to, twice as many women as men are worried that they won't have enough for retirement. And so anticipating it and planning for it is something that I'm going to encourage each of you to set goals and try to do, so that you're not staying in the workforce until your 80s and 90s, like that one commercial shows on TV, which is kind of funny to see that. But sometimes it happens. Sometimes it happens. And what can really affect, as we anticipate the future, are healthcare costs. And like I said, this could be a webinar that is in different sections. This could be one all on its own, that as we age, and in any time of our life, some of the biggest costs can be in healthcare. In retirement, our premiums for healthcare and prescription drug costs keep going up. And on the right-hand side of the screen, long-term care costs. If you're spending any time in places like home care, where you're homebound, nursing home care, and assisted living. And so I'm going to ask you a question about healthcare cost in retirement, because it's so important as we anticipate the future to know the risk of how many adults over the age of 65 will spend some time in a long-term care facility. And I work with elder law attorneys on this, so I know the answer. I'll see if you know this and see if you get it as right as you got the last poll. How many adults over the age of 65 will spend time in a long-term care facility? And if you choose the right answer on this one, then I'm going to give you the best grade I can give you. Is it 1 in 5, 2 in 5, or 3 in 5 will spend time in a long-term care facility? Wow, okay. So I'll give you the right answer. The correct answer, close that poll out there, because what do we have? The correct answer is B, 2 in 5. And I think because of the issues of Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, and other conditions, it is moving closer to 3 in 5. But right now, the statistic is still 2 in 5. 2 in 5 adults will spend some time in a long-term care facility. 1 in 10 over the age of 65 will spend more than 3 years, with an average cost of $100,000 plus per year. These costs, as we anticipate the future, will devastate most seniors' finances and estates without the proper planning. And believe me, there are wonderful plans out there for how to protect your estate and at least plan for and anticipate long-term care costs. When I was working as a financial planner, saw people work all of their lives, and as they entered into their latter years, lose everything, their homes, their savings, to long-term care. My advice to you is to speak with an elder law attorney or to speak with your financial planners and people in the know to know if you need to be protected. Now, some people, their estates are minimal and they would qualify for some aid. But for those that have savings and a home, that is one of the biggest risks right there to planning and anticipating the future, long-term care costs. So that that is something for us to really, really understand and know as women. Why? Women outlive men. If you go to long-term care facilities, 90% of the people in a long-term care facility, women. And so we do need to understand that. Now we're going to get into the final letter in MAP, which is how to provide for the transfer of our assets. We've worked all of our lives. We've managed, we've anticipated. Now we need to think about providing for the transfer of our assets. And why I say that is we're all going to leave this earth. And as we leave this earth, we leave a life print behind. And that life print, I hope, will be neat and will be something that, that looks in order. Okay. And so it looks like Lethelma shut her mic off, but I'm going to keep going because she may have had to tend to her little one. The MAP, the P is provide for the transfer of your assets. Provide, when you do it the right way, all of your final wishes will be faithfully executed. The P means provide you with peace of mind, both now and in the future. The P means provide you control and the protection of your assets and treasures. Yes, even after you're gone, you can leave a legacy or life print. And how do we do that? We can provide, number one, for our family and our friends through wills, trusts, and outright gifts. We can think about charity, our churches, our ministries, the things that we love to give to here on earth, that God has shared a burden on our hearts. And how do we do that? We can do that with planned gifts, charitable trusts, gift annuities, and many other things at the American Baptist Foundation. That is one thing that I work with my staff to help our faithful women and church members know how to leave a gift as part of their providing. Or left to not providing and not having a plan, we still have the government that would love to step in through taxes and probate and take a lot of what our hard-earned dollars and our work meant to us, and that distribution go to the government. We don't want that. We don't want we really don't want to build a wing of a nursing home either, or have it go to government in taxes and probate. So let's see, what should we do to provide? Let's have a financial strategy that takes care of our investments, our retirement accounts, life insurance, and trusts. Let's look at charitable giving strategies. And I'm giving you a website there, which is our website. The American Baptist Church's, American Baptist Foundation has a website called abcofgiving.org. You can go on there anytime and get all this information on giving strategies that'll save you both in taxes and leave a life print. Tax planning with your tax advisors. And beneficiary planning. I want to mention this to you because I know many, many women don't realize that on their life insurance policies or their IRAs or pensions, that maybe they haven't updated and kept current their beneficiaries. If we lose a spouse, or if our children get married, or retitling and naming our beneficiaries properly. And then I'm going to talk to you a little bit about special considerations. What do we do as we plan for our aging years and our health? Durable powers of attorney, medical powers of attorney, and living wills. So providing for the transfer to leave this life and leave all that God has given us behind has some special considerations. And I want you to know, because I work individually with one size does not fit all. So I can't recommend to you, oh, this is what you need or don't need. Some people, a will is sufficient. Many people haven't even gotten to first base and gotten their will done. You should all think about writing up your last will and testament, because it becomes your last will and testimony. Living trusts are available, charitable trust, and planned gifts. Again, your beneficiary designations updated, current on all of your IRAs. And thinking about your last years and your health, living wills and advance directives. And I'm going to give you a resource that I found about 5 years ago called 5 Wishes. Now, 5 Wishes is a website that you can go to, and you can get an actual living will that you can do online, or you can have it printed out and signed with your advance directives. I went to an attorney. I have a living will and my husband has one, but I also have my 5 wishes that I can have on record with my doctor and hospital. And what I hear too often from women and men, they'll have these myths that, well, I don't need to do anything. I don't have anything. My estate is too small, or I'm still young. Well, I've seen young people have healthy years, and then all of a sudden they lose their health and they haven't made proper planning. I'll have plenty of time in the future, some say, or the state will take care of everything for me. The last one I love, my spouse will get everything anyway, and he or she can worry about making a will. Not good. That's not a plan. Provide for the transfer of your assets. Have a properly drafted will, a legal document that distributes your assets, makes you a good steward according to the wishes that you have. That will allow you to select the executor or personal representative that would speak for you when you're gone. And for young families, the best thing you can do is have a will that would give the choice of guardians that you have for your minor children. You do not want the court appointing a guardian because you didn't have a will and telling you, once you're gone, who is going to take care of those minor children. Of course, you want to create in your will or in your final plan a legacy, remembering church, missions, and the important things that you did here on earth. A little bit about a healthcare power of attorney. Then I'm going to open it up, Thelma, for some question and answers, some Q&A. Healthcare power of attorney is a trusted person if you're incapacitated that would help with making major medical decisions, your medication. If you can't, speak for yourself, you've designated them as the person that could speak for your health care when you can't. A living will is something that everyone should have, and that's why I gave you that 5 wishes. How do you want to be cared for in your last weeks or days? How do you want to be given water, nutrition, medication? Do you want to be resuscitated? Do you want special measures taken? Some states call that advance directive. And that's you taking control, providing for the transfer from this life to the next. Again, 5 wishes. This is something that is so easy to get. And if you don't have a living will, please look this up. Hospitals recognize it. It was written by attorneys. It's good now in 46 states. There's only a few states, but they're all coming on board for people to be able to have a copy of the 5 wishes, a living will. And that's, again, the resources for that and the website. So leaving a legacy is what the American Baptist Foundation helps our women do. We've known many American Baptist women who've worked with us to leave a gift in their estate plan. And I just want to mention, recently, American Baptist women have opened up the new American Baptist Women Bridges and Gateways Endowment Fund. So if you're making any plans in that preparation in the P, providing for the efficient transfer of your assets, please think about this new endowment fund that will empower godly women and girls for generations to come. So I'm just going to briefly go through, and then we'll go into questions. The summary that I want to share with you is we've talked about managing the present, the M, income, debt. Try to set goals for that. Try to go on to Dave Ramsey's website or the D-Free, Debt-Free Living, and set some goals for 2020 about getting that income and debt under control. anticipating our future costs and life stages in retirement, that's just wisdom. That's being wise. And plan. Don't cross your fingers and hope that everything goes well as you age and that you'll never need long-term care or you'll never have to worry about your assets. They'll just go to your children. No, if you don't have a properly set will, written will or trust, the probate courts will decide you do have a will. And it's written by the probate courts and people that you've never met. And you want to do that. And then consider, as Christian women, leaving a life print, charitable gifts that leave a legacy. And if you ever need any help with that, of course, Lethelma and AB Women can direct you right to our field staff with the American Baptist Foundation or myself. And so I will open it up, Lethelma, for any questions. And as we do that, I'll leave this screen up because I've kind of summarized the resources that I've promised you. That you know, these are great resources for our women to have. All right, Lethelma, turn it back to you because we have about another 10 minutes or so.
Thank you so much, Linda. This was so great. There was so much helpful information. I was just taking notes over here. So if there are questions.
Oh, I'm glad.
Yeah, so if there are questions, this is the time to raise them. And while people are thinking, I would like for you to kind of explain more about charitable giving and planned gifts. So is it that a person would give their money and the organization can do what they please with it? Could you talk about the legacy piece and like how active a person can be in the use of their funds when it comes to charitable giving? Because I'm just thinking of why someone might be hesitant to want to give a planned gift or that maybe they feel like they won't have control over.
Right. The best way, you know, people years ago, about 60-70% of planned gifts came through the will. And that's all people knew to do, was to leave 10% or something to their church or ministry or mission. And then sometimes they didn't leave a little directive, you know, that they wanted it to be used for a certain mission or a certain cause. With planned giving being so popular, people, especially the baby boomer generation, and even those that are in their 70s and 80s, they really have done a lot in their lifetime in ministry and mission, and they have a good idea what they would like to do with their life print and legacy gift. And so the American Baptist Foundation in our planned giving allows the donor to give us what we call directives in writing that we legally must follow. So if someone leaves a gift, let's just say to the Bridges and Gateway Endowment, that would be for the purposes only of what that endowment supports. If they leave a planned gift like a charitable gift annuity or a charitable trust or a family endowment, they can actually write the directive up for us. So once they leave this earth, we have a record that this is what this money is to be used for. And it really is nice, rather than just saying, I hope it goes where I want it to go. So we call it a letter of direction or beneficiary directives, that we could say, you want 10% to go to your church and 10% for American Baptist women, and you want it to go to this fund and this mission support, and even as specific as to support a mission cause that they were really supporting in their lifetime. So that's a really good question. Thank you, Lethelma, for asking that one. Yeah, we work individually with each one to make sure their requests are honored.
No questions so far, but also just thinking about student loan debt. Since that is one of, you said that it's the top two, mortgage debt as well as loans. So I'm just wondering how to manage that, because that's not something that you can manage, you know, just with the budget, because it's kind of set, right? You can refinance them, but how might you think that someone who wants to engage in this, who has a lot of student loans, how can they be encouraged? Because it's very discouraging. I'm someone who has a significant amount of student loan debt, and you feel like you'll never be able to leave an imprint because of that. Investing in yourself to be able to be a giver, a generator.
Right.
You kind of feel.
it was shocking to me to see the crisis that we're in. And what that does is also prevent your age group and even those in their 30s and 40s and on from committing to mortgages and other things that really were typical debt that you took on in your 30s and 40s because you have this student loan debt. And I think, you know, you're right. It is a set amount and it is usually a set rate. You will see a lot of attention paid to this in next year's election because it is what they're calling a crisis right now, because young people are just defaulting. They can't do it. You know, I mean, you can't get money where there is no money. And so, you know, my recommendation is, you know, the debt is there. And as Christians, we are to honor and pay our debt. But the idea is please pay attention to the politicians and where they stand on it. Make your vote count if it is something that is really important to you. And also, I say to everyone when it comes to debt, take it in small steps. You know, the things that you have to pay, that you have to pay off, you take that and you try to get even your small credit card debt, you know, the smallest one, get that paid off, set a goal. But student loan debt, because of the way it was set up, is the biggest burden, you know, underneath of mortgages and preventing your generation from actually being able to take on home ownership, which is sad. It really is.
Thank you.
The answer for it, but I think it's becoming such a crisis that it has to be addressed. There has to be some relief given, or there would just be more and more defaults. You know, people can't hold that kind of debt.
We have a question. How best can I prepare for long-term health care? Is it best to get a long-term health care insurance policy?
You know, that is a very good question. When I was in a financial planning role for 20 years, I actually worked with elder law attorneys, and I actually, for my husband and myself, I did purchase a long-term care insurance plan. At that point, I was in, I would say, my late 40s, early 50s, so it was reasonable and we were healthy. And what they recommended was, you know, to take it out in your, you know, as early as you can, you know, that you can afford it. But to look for a plan that is approximately 3 years, that would cover 3 years in a long-term care facility. The reason being, if you look back to the average stay, was 3 years. So you're covering the averages, because to get an unlimited long-term care insurance plan is almost not manageable. The other thing is to talk to an elder law attorney. If you're past your 40s and 50s and maybe approaching years where it's unaffordable to buy insurance or you're not healthy, there are ways to set up trusts and protect your assets that are legal. And I recommend that you speak, if you do something like that, that you speak with a specialist, an elder law attorney on that. Okay. But that is,
yeah, I just wanted to make a comment because when you were talking about student loan debt and credit card debt, I felt like this conversation made me think about prevention and early education. So like educating my daughter early on about student loan debt, because I think that there is a lot, we wait until the debt is accumulated before we educate about it.
And the foundation, we wish we had more time, and I think churches need to do something to have classes on money management so that young people understand what simple interest is versus compounding interest versus, you know, if I do not pay off my credit card and it just keeps revolving and growing and compounding, they need to understand that it's not a good thing, and to live within their means. And I think a lot of churches are actually doing that. You know, they're hosting classes where even Dave Ramsey has courses that churches can bring in online, virtually like this, you know, talk about how to prevent getting into this situation and into the crisis of a debt that would be overwhelming. Because once you're in it, it's, if you have a bad credit history, it impairs you for many years. You know, if you lose it's hard to get any type of loan then, car loan, mortgage. So we need to, as Christians and as churches, understand that there can't be any legacy
Right.
to our next generation if we only leave a debt legacy. We don't want to do that. You know, and I agree with you, LaFelma. I think education is key and prevention. Very good.
Well, thank you so much, Linda. This was, again, fantastic and educational. It's recorded, so we hope that people will watch it over and over again and share it with a friend. And they're in our circles. So thank you so much, Linda.
Oh, you're quite welcome. It was my pleasure.
Your brilliance. Thank you for sharing it with us.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Everyone, I hope you all have a wonderful night. Thank you so much for joining us. Don't forget to take our survey at the end of this webinar. Please let us know how you enjoyed the webinar. Thank you and good night.
And good night.